King Jesus, King Jesus. Okay. Hey, I want to do a video about this article in veteranstoday.com, which is a veterans organization headed by senior editor Gordon Duff. And the article is by Gordon Duff. It's called Veterans Today Issues First Ebola Warning. Now, I'm going to read you this, and I'm also going to analyze this from my perspective. And I say my perspective is maybe different from Gordon Duff's perspective. Since I'm a trained scientist and physician, there are certain approaches that I take to understanding information that relies a lot on intuition and base knowledge and experience. So those are the things I'll be using. Those are the talents that I'll be using to discuss this article. It starts out, this is what we have reason to believe. There is an organized terror plot on behalf of financial entities to spread Ebola through the United States. We believe airlines and hospitals are part of it, that Homeland Security and the TSA are involved. I looked on this as an analog of the crotch bombing in Detroit, Christmas some years ago, when a filthy, mumbling, and penniless son of a millionaire CIA asset Nigerian flew from Yemen to Ghana to Nigeria to Amsterdam to Detroit without tickets, a passport or visa, luggage, or even a recent bath. He flew first class. At some point during this trip, airport security officials gave him a bomb, we believe, at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. Now, I want to concur with Gordon Duff on this. I think these agencies, Homeland Security and the transportation safety, are involved. I think a lot of assets in the government are involved. It's mostly headed by Jewish politicians and operatives. So I agree with Gordon Duff on that. It says today the same thing is going on. We have information through private communications with a well-known and sometimes maligned foreign intelligence agency that the USA has been targeted. Rather than use a weaponized Ebola strand, people are being purposely infected with Ebola. As to who they are and why they allow this, there could be many reasons. I don't care if they're jihadists, Boko Haram, mind controlled, or whatever. That question and questions like it have conveniently been an excuse for blocking investigation and prosecutions. Now, some weeks ago, What Does It Mean? Social Falls website talked about Ebola martyrs. But I think this infection, while it may not infect white people, I really believe that it's designed for black people, both in Africa, in the United States, and around the world. I think the global powers have concluded that we must be eliminated. So that's what I think about it. It says we do not know for certain if this involved profit related to vaccinations, but we do know that it involves the upcoming U.S. election, oil price fluctuations, and manipulation of the U.S. stock market. Now, I agree that there's a profit motive through the stock market and other trading positions in the stock market and the futures market. And I do believe it's targeted for U.S. elections so that so many black people will be killed that they won't go to the polls or they won't vote by mail. Simple as that. It says billions have been lost in the last 10 days, but more importantly, hundreds of billions may be made in what is now a pure pump and dump at the hands of the grand cartel that Preston James speaks of so often. The grand cartel. The grand cartel is just the people at the top of the pyramid that the structure of society is based on. It says today Turkish tanks fired on Kurdish positions defended by U.S. air support inside Syria. The Turks are now fighting openly on the side of ISIS against the United States. Earlier today, the Turks hit Kurdish positions inside Turkey and Syria with American-built F-16s while denying the U.S. the ability to use its own NATO base inside Turkey. The timing of the Ebola scare coincides with these actions and those behind ISIS. The Murdoch-Fox Media Group, which includes the heart thief Dick Cheney, the Koch brothers, key leaders of the American right, John McCain, Lindsey Graham, along with Bronfman and Rudolph Giuliani groups, supported by Qatar and the Saudi royal family, and the Likud mobsters in Israel are a good guess. What is required is broad control over international travel, the media, and the ability to move infected personnel into the United States using airlines, but also human trafficking methods that Las Vegas and Macau casino bosses know very well. This is how Ebola is now being spread. We estimate that as many as 5,000 Americans have now been exposed to Ebola. We are asking security personnel to record tail numbers though the CIA doesn't always use them, of private aircraft used to transport disease vectors into the United States and Europe. We have confirmation that this is being done. We do not have confirmation as to all involved, but we do know the United States is targeted and that the intent is to kill as many Americans as possible to undermine social cohesiveness and destroy whatever confidence the American people have in government. Now I want to emphasize that there's very little cohesiveness, social cohesiveness in the United States already. Why? Because the Jews have trained white people to believe they're superior to black, but not to Jews, just to black. So that is the source of a lack of social cohesiveness in America. If I compare it to Brazil, Brazil is 100 times more cohesive socially than America. Everybody gets along in Brazil. The families are totally mixed. Everybody gets along. The only people in Brazil that are clannish to exclude others are the Jews here. It says we have traced financial operations behind this to Switzerland, UBS as handlers of operational funds, and a number of CIA contractors as prime movers. You would think that Switzerland was involved because of the Octagon group there, and also because there's a shift to the right in the public there. They just voted in an extreme right-wing government, a Nazi government, a fascist government. This is entirely a move from the political right, and we have traced direct involvement to members of the Murdoch Fox groups. The Ebola scare, which we fear will become something far more sinister than a simple scare, also is paralleled by a nuclear terrorism scare, as well perpetrated by the Murdoch and Cheney consortium on behalf of the Al-Qaeda operational group of former CIA, Mossad, and Saudi intelligence officers. My personal recommendation is to close the U.S. border, stop all African travel, make medical checks on all airline travel mandatory. So I'm not going to tell you what his conclusion was, because I think that is highly inflammatory, controversial. I don't disagree so much, but this is serious. It's serious to consider. In other words, I regard this article more fact-based than anything on television. From everything I've known all my life as a microbiologist and physician, I believe a lot of what is conveyed in this article.